How dangerous is this for Paul?
This is a more dangerous fight than Gervonta Tank Davis, but it's a more winnable fight than Gervonta Tank Davis. Gervonta was small, fast, super skilled. Joshua is big, heavy puncher, but not as evasive. So I think if Jake has the right game plan, he has a pretty good shot of winning this fight.
Hey everyone, how's it going? I hope you guys all had a nice weekend. Obviously there was some good boxing on this weekend. The Chris Eubank Jr. Against Conor Benn fight. I thought it was a good fight. And really I was not expecting to make this video on a Monday evening. I do sometimes touch on the big UFC events. Obviously there was a big UFC fight this weekend, so I was going to talk about that. There's a great card on this week. With David Benavidez, Anthony Yard, Bam Rodriguez on the card, Devin Haney Norman, Abdullah Mason, Sam Noakes. So a great card in Saudi Arabia. But obviously, the big news is broke today, and let's be real. Everyone's asking me my opinion on this. So let's talk about it. Anthony Joshua against Jake Paul has now been confirmed and is official. It's a fight that's going to happen in Florida next month. There's a press conference coming up shortly. But yeah, a lot of people are, really losing their minds today. Giving the breakdown of the fight and, Jake Paul's in trouble and this and that. My stance is actually going to remain the same. I made a YouTube short, I think a week ago. So, please go check that out. And I still don't think that the fight's going to happen. I don't think the fight's going to happen. And I actually think it's actually quite similar to, I remember when Amir Khan fought against Kell Brook. That was a fight that us, British fans were waiting for a long time. And it really wasn't until I saw them go back to their opposite corners where I said to myself, wow, the fight's actually happening. And for me, this is the exact same thing. Now, I haven't actually heard this on the inside, but this is my honest opinion now that I think about it. Jake Paul obviously was scheduled to fight against Gervonta Tank Davis. Gervonta Tank Davis, obviously, a world champion at 135 pounds. That fight actually was not selling well. Okay, there was a lot of, talk about that fight not selling well. Tickets, there were still a lot of tickets open, and, not many people were talking about that fight. I think on the night, a lot of people would have tuned in because Gervonta Davis is the big pay-per-view star in America. And Jake Paul obviously, does good numbers as well. So I think on the night, a lot of people would have tuned in on Netflix, but it actually was not selling well in terms of, people actually going to the event and buying tickets. So I think that Netflix has pretty much said after that fight got canceled, said to Jake Paul and his team that, we need a big fight to replace this one. Jake Paul then tried, obviously, said names like Terrence Crawford, Ryan Garcia. Those fights were never going to happen. But then I think Jake Paul wanted to fight Nate Diaz. He wanted the rematch. And Netflix, they were not interested in that fight. News broke that Netflix, they weren't interested in that fight. So I think that, this is a smart way of Jake Paul and his team. They brought Anthony Joshua's name to the table, and Netflix really liked that one. Anthony Joshua, obviously, former undisputed world champion at heavyweight. Massive knockout artist, massive name in Britain, is a British fighter coming to America. Another pay-per-view fighter that does massive numbers. So I think they would have brought that Anthony Joshua fight to the table. Netflix would have been interested, and they just said, let's go ahead and make this fight. I don't think that the fight's actually going to happen, okay? I think that, again, they made this fight because it was a big fight for Netflix and they had nowhere to go. I think that there will be some clever little thing, whether it's before the fight or, someone's going to fail a drugs test or, someone's going to get injured and then they scrap the whole event. That's actually risky to do, okay? Because that would be 2 events in a row that, the fight gets canceled. So maybe, Netflix, will they pull the trigger on boxing? I'm not sure. But I don't think that this fight happens. That's my honest opinion. I think a lot of people are saying, Anthony Joshua's going to take the dive and, he's, sold his soul and things like that. I don't think that people understand. Even if Anthony Joshua was to punch at 50%, he would knock out Jake Paul. I mean, Jake Paul, if the fight were to happen, has absolutely no chance. You're literally talking about someone that, fought Tommy Fury, who is a novice. Tommy Fury, arguably lost against KSI. I thought it was a draw. It was an awful fight. But Tommy Fury can't even do anything to that level of fighter. So, Jake Paul looked like a novice in that fight. He has no boxing ability at all. He's a big clubber. He's got a, he goes in there, tries to throw a massive right hand, and there's nothing else to him. You're talking about Jake Paul, someone that's never taken a risk in his entire boxing career, other than maybe the Tommy Fury fight, and he lost that fight. Julio Cesar Chavez Jr., old, never threw punches in his prime anyway, has no ambition, took the fight for money. Mike Tyson, 60 years of age, got in a serious health condition before that fight. The fight shouldn't have even been sanctioned. Couldn't throw a punch, could barely walk. All these other guys that the man has fought. Nate Robertson, a basketball player. So, you don't go from that to Anthony Joshua. And yes, like what Jake Paul has said, Anthony Joshua's a little bit stiff. Anthony Joshua, yeah, sure, he's stiff to Alexander Usyk, who's got brilliant footwork and moves his head 24/7, and, is a great technical, boxer that, it's hard to hit him, this and that. Yeah, sure, Anthony Joshua is stiff against that. Or Anthony Joshua is relatively stiff against someone like Andy Ruiz, who's got, fast hands. Jake Paul's not that. I mean, Jake Paul is not some technical boxer that's hard to hit or anything. He stands right in front of you, and he's relatively tough, I guess you could say, and throws a big right hand, that's it. He's got absolutely nothing to his game. I mean, Jake Paul, if he was an actual fighter fighting regular guys, that's what he would be. He would be a durable journeyman that throws a right hand, gives it a little bit of a go, comes, gets his money, and leaves. That's what he would be. He's not some technical boxer, so Anthony Joshua will be able to hit him easily. But look, I'm not going to get into too much of a breakdown of what would happen, because again, in my opinion, the fight does not happen. This is a clever way for Jake Paul to pretend. Again, I felt like Netflix, they needed a big fight, and this is just a clever way of them to, make it look like that fight's happening. Do not be surprised if there's an injury, if there's a pullout, failed drugs test, or something as to where that fight does not happen. Those are my honest thoughts. I don't care if there's a press conference, the weigh-in, the day before the fight, until I see those guys in opposite corners and Michael Buffer or whoever it is says, let's get ready to rumble. I cannot see it happening. Okay, and if it were to happen, even at 50%, Anthony Joshua, even if he's not trying, would knock him clean out. He would knock him clean out. 10-ounce gloves on, he's knocking him clean out. Apparently, Anthony Joshua can't weigh more than 245 pounds. It doesn't matter if Anthony Joshua's weight drained, he would still knock him out. So look, those are my opinions. I know I, went off on one, rambled on a little bit there. As always, thanks to you all for tuning in. Please make sure to let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Again, it's a video where I would, much rather, like to talk about other things, a great card on this weekend. But look, you guys, that's what we do. A lot of people, wanted my thoughts and my opinions. So, I had to give them. So, thanks again for tuning in. Definitely do appreciate it. And I'll see you guys on the next one.